Welcome back to Nighttime History. Today we will be exploring the quiet, candlelit world of a medieval archive, where centuries of knowledge rest in careful silence. Thank you for joining us. Sit back and relax as we dive deep into these ancient chambers of learning, where monks and scholars once preserved the written word through long winter nights. You stand before heavy oak doors reinforced with iron bands. The wood feels smooth beneath your fingertips, polished by countless hands over hundreds of years. As you push them open, cool air rushes out to meet you, carrying the distinctive scent of old parchment, leather bindings, and beeswax. Your footsteps echo softly on stone floors, worn smooth by generations of careful feet. The archive stretches before you in the flickering light of oil lamps mounted along the walls. Tall wooden shelves rise toward vaulted ceilings, their surfaces darkened with age. Each shelf holds rows of manuscripts, some bound in leather, others wrapped in protective cloth. The spines show various states of wear. Some gleam with gold leaf lettering, while others bear simple markings in faded ink. Medieval archives served as more than simple storage spaces. These rooms functioned as the memory banks of their institutions, whether monasteries, cathedrals, or royal courts. Every document represented hours of painstaking labour. Scribes would spend months copying single texts by hand, forming each letter with practiced precision. The archives protected these investments of time and skill. You move deeper into the room, noting how the temperature drops slightly. Medieval builders understood that cooler conditions helped preserve delicate materials. They constructed these spaces with thick stone walls and minimal windows. The few openings that exist face north to avoid direct sunlight, which would fade precious inks and damage parchment. The organization system reveals itself as you examine the shelves more closely. Medieval archivists developed sophisticated cataloging methods long before modern library science. They grouped materials by subject, importance, and frequency of use. Religious texts occupied prime positions near the entrance. Legal documents and charters filled middle sections. Historical chronicles and classical works resided in quieter corners. Small wooden tags hang from leather cords attached to each shelf. These labels, written in Latin, identify the contents of each section. You can make out words like psalterium for psalters, evangelium for gospel books, and chartularium for collections of charters. The handwriting varies, suggesting different archivists added to the system over time. A reading desk stands near one window, positioned to catch the best natural light during daylight hours. The slanted surface bears the marks of countless books that rested there. Grooves worn into the wood show where readers placed their elbows while studying. A small shelf underneath holds reading accessories that medieval scholars considered essential. You notice the candle holders built into the desk, their metal surfaces tarnished with age. Medieval readers needed artificial light for much of the year, especially during winter months when daylight faded early. They used specially designed candles that burned slowly and evenly, minimizing the risk of dripping wax onto precious pages. The holders include small shields to protect manuscripts from direct flame. The air itself tells stories in this space. That particular mustiness comes from centuries of organic materials slowly aging together. Parchment, made from animal skins, releases its own distinctive aroma as it ages. The leather bindings contribute their scent, deepened by years of handling. Even the wooden shelves add to the complex bouquet, their resinous qualities mellowing over time. Storage methods in medieval archives reflected both practical needs and available materials. Manuscripts too large for shelves lay flat in specially constructed chests. These containers, lined with fabric, protected oversized volumes from dust and pests. Iron clasps and locks secured the most valuable items. Only senior archivists held keys to these repositories. You approach one such chest, its surface decorated with carved patterns, now softened by age. The metalwork shows skilled craftsmanship, with hinges designed to support heavy lids without sagging. Inside, you would find layers of protective cloth separating individual volumes. Medieval archivists understood that direct contact between bindings could cause damage over time. The smaller manuscripts on the shelves display various binding styles. Some feature simple leather covers with minimal decoration. Others showcase elaborate designs pressed into the leather or created with precious metals. The most important texts often receive jeweled covers, though many archives kept these in separate treasury rooms for additional security. Chain marks on some volumes reveal another preservation method. Medieval libraries and archives often chained their most consulted books to reading stands or shelves. This practice, called chained library systems, allowed access while preventing theft. The chains, usually made of iron, attached to reinforced corners of the binding. Readers could consult the texts, but not remove them from the archive. Environmental control occupied much of an archivist's attention. They fought constant battles against moisture, insects, and rodents. You can see evidence of their efforts in the dried herbs tucked between volumes. Lavender, wormwood, and rue helped repel insects. Small dishes placed strategically around the room once held mixtures designed to absorb excess moisture from the air. The flooring beneath your feet consists of carefully fitted stone tiles. This choice reflected practical considerations rather than aesthetics. Stone resisted moisture better than wood and provided less habitat for destructive pests. The slight slope you detect channels any water away from the shelves toward drainage points near the walls. Medieval archivists developed their own specialized tools for maintaining collections. Long-handled brushes allowed them to dust high shelves without disturbing arrangements. Soft cloths made from specific fabrics cleaned bindings without causing damage. They even created special pastes from natural ingredients to repair minor tears in parchment. You pause at a section containing administrative documents. These everyday records provide glimpses into medieval life that chronicles sometimes miss. Account books detail purchases of parchment, ink ingredients, and binding materials. Work logs record which scribes copied which texts and how long each project required. Even simple supply lists reveal the careful planning behind archive operations. The ink recipes themselves represented closely guarded knowledge. Medieval scribes created ink from oak galls, iron sulfate, and gum arabic. The proportions mattered tremendously. Too much iron caused ink to eat through parchment over time. Too little resulted in fading. Successful recipes passed from master to apprentice through generations. Different coloured inks served specific purposes in medieval documents. Black dominated everyday writing. Red, called rubrication, highlighted important passages or marked chapter beginnings. Blue appeared in special texts, often made from expensive lapis lazuli. Gold leaf decorated the most significant manuscripts, applied with adhesives made from egg whites or fish glue. Let's stop here for a moment. As you settle deeper into this exploration of medieval archives, I want to invite you to become part of our community of nighttime travelers. If you're enjoying this gentle journey through history, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications. Your support through likes and subscriptions helps us continue creating these peaceful historical escapes. Take a moment now to let us know in the comments where you're settling in to sleep tonight and what time zone you're listening from. We love hearing from our worldwide community of history enthusiasts who find comfort in these quiet explorations of the past. Now, let's continue our tour through these ancient halls of knowledge. The writing surfaces in medieval archives tell their own stories. Before paper became common in Europe, scribes worked primarily with parchment or vellum. Creating these materials required significant skill. Parchment makers soaked animal skins in lime solutions, scraped away hair and flesh, then stretched the skins on frames to dry. The finest vellum came from calfskin, prized for its smooth surface and durability. You run your fingers along a manuscript page, feeling the subtle texture difference between hair side and flesh side of the parchment. Medieval scribes knew these differences intimately. The hair side, slightly rougher, held ink differently than the smoother flesh side. They planned their page layouts accordingly, ensuring optimal readability. Binding workshops often operated near major archives. These craftsmen transformed loose pages into durable books through techniques refined over centuries. They sewed gatherings of pages onto cords or leather strips, attached these to wooden boards, then covered everything with leather. The process required precision at every step. Misaligned sewing created books that wouldn't close properly or damaged quickly with use. The archive's restoration area occupies a small alcove near better light. Here, skilled monks or lay brothers repaired damaged manuscripts. Their tools remain arranged on work surfaces, bone folders for creasing, awls for making holes, needles of various sizes. Small pots once held adhesives made from cheese, flour paste or animal glues. Each adhesive served specific purposes, chosen based on the repair needed. Medieval archivists faced constant threats to their collections. Fire posed the greatest danger, capable of destroying centuries of work in hours. They developed multiple safeguards against this threat. Stone construction helped, but they also maintained water reserves specifically for firefighting. Some archives built separate fireproof chambers for their most irreplaceable documents. Water damage presented another serious concern. Leaking roofs or flooding could destroy parchment and wash away ink. You notice the careful attention to waterproofing throughout the archive. Lead gutters channel rainwater away from walls. The roof uses overlapping tiles sealed with mortar. Interior walls show signs of regular maintenance to prevent moisture infiltration. Pest control required constant vigilance. Bookworms, actually beetle larvae, could tunnel through entire volumes. Mice and rats gnawed bindings to build nests. Even seemingly harmless creatures, like silverfish, consumed sizing agents in parchment. Medieval archivists combated these threats through various means, from herbal deterrents to architectural features that limited access points. The human threats to archives proved equally challenging. Theft remained a constant concern, especially for illuminated manuscripts with gold leaf or jeweled covers. Political upheavals brought risks of intentional destruction. During conflicts, opposing factions might target archives to eliminate legal documents or historical records that supported their enemies' claims. Security measures evolved to meet these challenges. Many archives employed multiple locks, requiring different keys held by separate officials. Night watchmen patrolled larger facilities. Some institutions required witnesses present whenever certain documents were accessed. These precautions might seem excessive, but the value of archived materials justified extensive protection. You pause before a section containing liturgical manuscripts. These books supported the religious life of medieval institutions through daily services and seasonal celebrations. Psalters provided texts for singing the divine office. Graduals contained music for the Mass. Lectionaries organized scripture readings throughout the church year. Each served specific functions within carefully structured worship. The musical notation in these manuscripts represents another specialized knowledge system. Medieval scribes developed various methods for recording melodies before modern notation emerged. Square notes on 4-line staves indicated relative pitch. Additional symbols showed rhythm and ornamentation. Skilled cantors could reconstruct complex melodies from these seemingly simple marks. Physical arrangements within the archive reflected usage patterns. Frequently consulted texts occupied easily accessible locations. Seasonal materials might migrate to convenient positions as needed. A gradual used daily during ordinary time might move to storage during Advent, replaced by special manuscripts for that season. This dynamic organization required careful tracking to prevent misplacement. The archive's catalog systems reveal medieval information management techniques. Rather than modern card catalogs or databases, medieval archivists created manuscript lists describing their holdings. These catalogs varied widely in detail. Simple versions might list only titles. Elaborate ones included opening words, physical descriptions, and provenance information for each item. Some catalogs employed sophisticated cross-referencing systems. Marginal notes directed readers to related texts. Symbol systems indicated condition, importance, or restricted access. Color coding might distinguish between different types of materials. These finding aids evolved organically as collections grew, and archivists discovered what information proved most useful. The scriptoriums, where many archived texts originated, maintained close connections with their archives. Young scribes often began their training by studying exemplars from archival collections. They learned to recognize different scripts, understand abbreviation systems, and appreciate quality craftsmanship. The archive served as both repository and teaching collection. Different scripts in the manuscripts reflect changing fashions and regional variations. Earlier volumes might display the rounded curves of Carolingian minuscule. Later editions show the angular efficiency of Gothic scripts. Professional scribes developed personal styles within these broader traditions. Experienced archivists could often identify specific scribes' work, like recognizing familiar handwriting. You notice manuscripts in various stages of completion. Some contain blank spaces where illuminated letters should appear. Others show guidelines for text that was never added. These unfinished works remind us that medieval book production involved multiple specialists. Scribes wrote text, rubricators added read elements, illuminators painted decorations, and binders assembled everything. Disruptions at any stage could leave books incomplete. The margins of many manuscripts contain later additions. Medieval readers actively engaged with their texts, adding commentary, corrections, and cross-references. Some marginal notes correct scribal errors. Others provide explanations of difficult passages. Still others record readers' personal responses or relate texts to contemporary events. These editions transformed static texts into living documents. Damage patterns in manuscripts tell stories of use and neglect. Worn corners indicate frequently consulted passages. Wax drips suggest late-night study sessions. Water stains might record leaking roofs or spilled wine. Each mark adds to the biography of individual volumes, recording their journeys through centuries of handling. The quietness of the archive at night would have provided ideal conditions for focused study. Medieval scholars often worked through dark hours, especially in winter when daylight limited productive time. They developed techniques for maximizing candlelight, using reflective surfaces and multiple flames to illuminate their work surfaces. The resulting eye strain was considered an occupational hazard of scholarly life. You move through another doorway into a secondary chamber where the archive's most precious works rest behind an iron grate. The metalwork shows intricate patterns, beautiful yet functional, allowing air circulation while preventing unauthorized access. Your breath mists slightly in the cooler air here. This inner sanctum maintains even more controlled conditions than the main archive. The manuscripts here represent different categories of importance. Founding charters establish the legal basis for institutions, bearing royal seals and witness marks. These documents often feature purple parchment, a luxury reserved for the highest authority. You can see where gold and silver inks trace out royal names and titles, the metallic particles still catching what little light filters through. Nearby rest volumes of canon law, their pages dense with legal terminology and careful annotations. Medieval churchmen consulted these texts to resolve disputes, determine proper procedures, and maintain orthodoxy. The margins bristle with notes in various hands as successive generations of readers added their interpretations and cross-references to other authorities. Financial records occupy their own specialized storage. Account rolls, some extending 20 feet when unrolled, track income and expenses across decades. These documents use specialized symbols and abbreviations that would seem cryptic to outsiders, but allowed trained clerks to process information efficiently. The rolls show evidence of regular consultation, their edges softened by handling. You notice how different types of documents received different physical treatment. Legal instruments often bear pendant seals, heavy wax impressions that authenticated agreements. These seals hang from silk cords or parchment strips, their weight requiring special storage considerations. Archivists created custom boxes with compartments to protect these fragile authentications from breaking. The cartularies represent another archival innovation. Rather than risk damage to original charters through frequent handling, medieval institutions created these copybooks. Scribes carefully transcribed important documents into bound volumes, often adding indexes and finding aids. The originals could then remain safely stored, while daily business proceeded using the copies. Moving along the shelves, you encounter correspondence collections, letters between religious houses, communications with Rome, diplomatic exchanges, all carefully preserved and organised. Medieval letter writing followed strict conventions. The placement of addresses, the formula of greetings, even the quality of parchment used, all conveyed messages about relationships and relative status. Some letters show signs of travel across great distances. Dust from different regions clings to creases. Water stains suggest river crossings or storms at sea. The fold patterns indicate how they fit into messenger pouches. A few still bear traces of the wax used to seal them closed, preserving privacy during transmission. The archival registers nearby record incoming and outgoing correspondence. Medieval institutions track their communications carefully, noting dates, carriers and subjects. These logs helped ensure important matters received responses and allowed administrators to follow up on unanswered queries. The systematic approach resembles modern office management adapted to medieval conditions. You pause before a collection of historical chronicles. These narratives preserved institutional memory across generations. Monastery chronicles recorded foundations, significant events, and notable personalities. Some entries appear routine, noting weather patterns or harvest yields. Others describe dramatic events like fires, wars, or visits from important dignitaries. The chronicle hands change periodically as different scribes assumed recording duties. You can trace personality changes through their entries. Some writers proved meticulous, recording every detail. Others summarized years in brief sentences. Occasionally, dramatic events prompted usually terse chroniclers to become unexpectedly eloquent, their excitement breaking through formal conventions. Maps and architectural plans occupy specially designed flat storage. Medieval cartographers worked with different conventions than modern map makers. Their maps often emphasized relationships over geographic accuracy. A monastery's map might show its spiritual connections to Rome or Jerusalem more prominently than nearby physical features. These documents required special handling to prevent cracking along fold lines. The building plans reveal medieval construction techniques and spatial organization. You can trace expansions and modifications through layers of drawings. Some plans show idealized visions never realized. Others document practical alterations made necessary by changing needs or available resources. Annotations in various hands record decisions, costs, and completion dates. Musical manuscripts deserve special mention within these archives. Beyond simple liturgical books, some archives preserved theoretical treatises on music, compositional experiments, and regional variations in chant traditions. The notation systems evolved continuously as musicians sought better ways to record increasingly complex polyphonic compositions. You examine a treatise on music theory, its pages filled with diagrams showing mathematical relationships between pitches. Medieval music theorists understood acoustic principles surprisingly well, even without modern scientific frameworks. They developed sophisticated systems for training singers, composing new works, and preserving ancient melodies for future generations. The archive's equipment storage reveals practical aspects of medieval record keeping. Inkhorns of various sizes wait in orderly rows. These hollowed animal horns held different coloured inks during active writing sessions. Pumice stones for smoothing rough parchment spots rest nearby. Small knives for scraping away errors show worn handles from generations of use. Wax tablets provided reusable writing surfaces for temporary notes. The wooden frames protected wax surfaces that scribes could smooth clean after transferring information to permanent records. Styluses of bone, wood and metal allowed writing in the wax. This technology, inherited from ancient Rome, remained useful throughout the medieval period for draft work. The measuring and ruling equipment shows surprising sophistication. Metal rulers with precise markings ensured consistent margins. Compass sets allowed scribes to create perfect circles for decorative elements. Pricking wheels made evenly spaced holes to guide text lines. These tools transformed blank parchment into orderly pages ready for text. Sealing equipment occupies its own specialized area. Different matrices produce seals for various officials and purposes. The archive might hold seal matrices no longer in active use, preserving them as historical artifacts. Containers of sealing wax in different colours wait nearby. Red dominated for most purposes, but green, yellow or black wax might indicate special document types. The binding repair station contains specialised tools developed over centuries, awls of different sizes for making sewing holes, curved needles for tight spaces, and bone folders for creating sharp creases, all show signs of extensive use. Thread and cord samples demonstrate various materials available for different binding styles. Some repairs required matching historical techniques to maintain authenticity. Environmental monitoring occupied significant attention even with medieval technology. Archivists tracked seasonal changes that affected storage conditions. They knew certain times of year brought increased risks from humidity or pests. Preparation calendars reminded staff when to refresh herb bundles, check for leaks, or move vulnerable materials to safer locations. The ventilation system deserves appreciation for its subtle engineering. Carefully placed openings create air circulation without admitting rain. The flow patterns prevent dead air pockets where mould might develop while avoiding strong drafts that could scatter loose documents. Seasonal adjustments using wooden shutters or fabric barriers allowed climate control throughout the year. You notice provisions for human comfort within the archive. Reading stands adjustable for different heights prevented neck strain during long study sessions. Footrests allowed shorter readers to maintain proper posture. Some desks include armrests positioned to support extended writing sessions. These ergonomic considerations show medieval understanding of occupational health. Small heating arrangements provided minimal warmth during winter work. Charcoal braziers, carefully positioned away from flammable materials, took the worst chill from the air. More often, archivists relied on thick robes and fingerless gloves that allowed detailed work while preserving some warmth. Hot drinks from nearby kitchens provided internal warmth during cold seasons. The archive's connection to broader intellectual networks becomes evident as you explore. Exchange agreements with other institutions allowed sharing of texts for copying. Travelling scholars carried letters of introduction granting archive access. These networks facilitated knowledge spread across Europe despite transportation challenges. An important text might take years to copy and decades to disseminate widely. Quality control measures ensured accuracy in copied texts. Experienced scribes checked junior workers' output. Reading aloud allowed detection of errors that silent reading might miss. Important documents underwent multiple reviews before receiving final approval. The reputation of scriptoriums depended on their accuracy, making quality control essential for continued commissions. Training programs for future archivists combined practical skills with theoretical knowledge. Apprentices learned proper handling techniques through supervised practice. They studied Latin to read documents and understand cataloguing systems. Mathematics helped with accounting records. Even basic medical knowledge proved useful for recognizing signs of parchment diseases or pest infestations. The social dynamics within medieval archives reflected broader institutional hierarchies. Senior archivists held considerable authority, controlling access to information that supported legal claims or historical precedents. Junior staff performed routine maintenance under close supervision. The career progression from apprentice to master archivist might span decades. Seasonal rhythms affected archival work significantly. Summer's longer days and better light encouraged major projects. Winter's cold and darkness limited activities to essential maintenance. Spring cleaning addressed accumulated winter moisture. Autumn preparations readied collections for harsh weather ahead. These patterns shaped both work schedules and preservation strategies. The archive served multiple constituencies with sometimes conflicting needs. Administrators required quick access to current records. Scholars sought historical materials for research. Legal professionals needed authenticated documents for court proceedings. Balancing these demands while maintaining preservation standards challenged medieval archivists just as it does modern librarians. Special occasions brought extraordinary activity to normally quiet archives. Royal visits prompted displays of treasured manuscripts. Legal disputes required rapid document retrieval. Religious festivals needed specific liturgical texts prepared in advance. These events tested organizational systems and staff capabilities while showcasing institutional resources. The role of archives in preserving cultural memory extended beyond mere storage. These institutions actively shaped how future generations understood their past. Selection decisions about what to preserve influenced historical narratives. Organizational systems emphasize certain types of knowledge over others. Even physical arrangements communicated judgments about relative importance. As you complete your circuit through these chambers, the weight of accumulated centuries presses gently on your awareness. Each manuscript represents countless hours of human effort. Every organizational system embodies generations of refined wisdom. The very air seems thick with patient dedication to preserving knowledge for unknown future readers. The silence here isn't empty, but full, pregnant with whispered consultations between long-dead scholars, the scratch of quills on parchment, the soft turning of pages worn smooth by careful hands. This archive stands as testament to medieval civilization's deep commitment to learning, law, and spiritual life. Thank you for joining us on this gentle journey through a medieval archive. If you enjoyed our work and are still awake, check out our other medieval content. And if you've fallen asleep, please relax and enjoy the rain.